In the eternal flow of time, water not only nourishes life, but also brings purification to the soul. Today, we embark on a sacred journey through 8 timeless stories from the ancient water temple, a hallowed sanctuary where Zen masters discovered profound healing for both body and spirit through the sacred ritual of soul cleansing. These tales passed down through generations hold the wisdom of transformation and the gentle power of water to wash away suffering and restore inner peace. Story 1. The first drop in the misty mountains of ancient Japan, where clouds kissed the earth and silence spoke louder than words, stood the legendary water temple of Kiyomizu. This sacred sanctuary had witnessed countless souls seeking healing for over 1,000 years. Its crystalline pools reflected not just the sky above, but the deepest truths within human hearts. Young Kenji arrived at the temple on an autumn morning when the maple leaves painted the world in shades of fire and go LD. His body bore the scars of a terrible accident that had claimed his family, and his spirit carried wounds far deeper than any physician could see. The village healers had declared his condition hopeless, but his grandmother, wise in the old ways, had whispered of the water temple's miraculous powers. "Seek Master Sojun," she had said with trembling hands. "He knows the secret of the first drop." The temple's entrance was guarded by 2 stone dragons whose eyes seemed to pierce through visitors' souls. As Kenji limped through the gate, his walking stick echoing against ancient stones, he wondered if he had made a grave mistake. The other monks moved like whispers through the courtyards, their faces serene masks that revealed nothing of the suffering Kenji carried within. Master Sojun was found beside the great purification pool, a circular body of water so still it resembled polished obsidian. The master appeared ancient yet timeless, his weathered hands folded in meditation, his breathing synchronized with the gentle rhythm of distant temple bells. "Master," Kenji called softly, his voice breaking the sacred silence. "I have come seeking healing." Without opening his eyes, Master Sojun spoke. "Show me your wound, young one." Kenji began to unwrap the bandages around his leg, but the master raised a single finger. "Not that wound, the one that truly pains you." Tears flowed down Kenji's cheeks as he collapsed beside the pool. "My family. They perished in the fire that consumed our home. I survived, but I carry their screams in my dreams. My body heals, but my spirit remains broken. The guilt devours me like a hungry demon." Master Sojun's eyes opened slowly, revealing depths of compassion that seemed to contain entire oceans. "Tell me, young Kenji, what do you see in this pool? Water, master, clear, pure water. Look deeper." Kenji stared into the pool's surface. At first, he saw only his own reflection, hollow cheeks, haunted eyes, a soul consumed by grief. But as minutes passed in contemplative silence, he began to notice subtle movements beneath the surface. Tiny particles floated in the water, invisible to casual observation, but clearly present to patient eyes. "I see impurities," Kenji whispered. "Yes. This pool, despite its appearance, contains countless particles of dust-fallen leaves and microscopic life. Yet we call it pure. Why?" Kenji pondered the question as temple bells marked the passage of time. I don't know, Master." Master Sojun reached into his robe and produced a small crystal vial containing what appeared to be a single drop of the most pristine water Kenji had ever seen. It caught the light like a captured star, seeming to glow with inner radiance. "This," the master said, holding the vial toward the sky, "is the essence of the first drop. It was created through years of meditation, prayer, and perfect understanding. Within this single drop lies the power to transform an entire ocean. How is that possible? Master, watch and learn. Master Sojun opened the vial and let the single drop fall into the vast pool. The moment it touched the surface, something extraordinary occurred. Ripples spread outward in perfect concentric circles, but these were not ordinary ripples. Where they passed, the water became visibly clearer, the impurities somehow dissolving or settling harmlessly to the bottom. Kenji gasped as the transformation continued. The entire pool, which had moments before contained countless invisible particles, now reflected the sky with such clarity that it seemed like a window to heaven itself. How? Kenji breathed. The first drop carries within it pure intention, young one. It does not fight the impurities or seek to destroy them. Instead, it shows them their true nature and offers them a choice: remain as discord or transform into harmony. Most choose harmony when shown such pure love. But Master, what does this have to do with my healing? Master Sojun smiled with infinite gentleness. You carry within yourself the same impurities as this pool: guilt, anger, despair, self-blame. These particles cloud your spirit and prevent you from seeing clearly. But you also carry within yourself the potential for the first drop. Over the following weeks, Master Sojun taught Kenji the ancient practices of the water temple. Each dawn they would sit beside different pools throughout the sacred grounds, each one designed to reflect a different aspect of human suffering and healing. At the pool of tears, Kenji learned to honor his grief without drowning in it. The master taught him that tears like rain were meant to fall and then pass nourishing growth rather than creating floods. At the pool of memories, Kenji practiced the art of witnessing his past without judgment. Your family's death was not your fault, Master Sojun would remind him gently. You survived not because you were chosen, but because life still has work for you to do. At the pool of forgiveness, the most challenging lesson awaited. Here Kenji had to learn to forgive himself, a task far more difficult than forgiving others. But how can I forgive myself when my family died while I lived? Kenji would ask repeatedly. By understanding that your survival was not a betrayal of their memory, but a sacred responsibility to honor their love by living fully. Months passed like seasons, each day bringing subtle but profound changes. Kenji's body healed completely, but more importantly, his spirit began to clear like the pool touched by the first drop. The breakthrough came during the winter solstice ceremony. As Kenji knelt beside the great purification pool in the pre-dawn darkness, Master Sojun handed him a new crystal vial. Create your first drop, the master instructed. But I don't know how. You know more than you think. What have you learned here? Kenji closed his eyes and reflected on his journey. He thought of his family not with the burning guilt that had consumed him, but with gentle love and gratitude for their time together. He thought of his own survival, not as a curse, but as an opportunity to carry their love forward into the world. As these thoughts crystallized in his mind, Kenji felt something shift within his heart. A warmth spread through his chest, and when he opened his eyes, tears were flowing down his cheeks. But these were different tears, clear, pure, filled with love rather than pain. One tear fell into the vial, and instantly it began to glow with the same radiance as Master Sojun's first drop. Now you understand, the master said softly. The first drop is not something I create for you. It is something you create within yourself through the alchemy of transformed suffering." Kenji poured his first drop into the pool, and once again the ripples of clarity spread outward. But this time, he understood the true miracle. The pool was not being healed by the drop. The drop was simply revealing the pool's inherent purity that had always existed beneath the surface impurities. Eve Rai soul carries this same pristine nature, Master Sojin explained. Suffering is like the particles in water, real but not permanent. The first drop reminds us of who we truly are beneath our pain. Years later, Kenji became a master himself, teaching others the secret of the first drop. To each broken soul who found their way to the water temple, he would say, "Your healing does not come from removing your pain, but from understanding that you are not your pain." Like a single pure drop can clarify an entire pool, one moment of true self-compassion can transform a lifetime of suffering. The temple's power lies not in its waters, but in helping you discover the crystal-clear essence that has always existed within your own heart. And in the mist-shrouded mountains, the water temple continued its ancient work, teaching countless souls that healing begins with the first drop. The recognition that beneath all our human struggles lies an unchanging purity that no amount of suffering can truly stain. The temple bells would ring each evening, their sound carrying across the valleys like ripples in a cosmic pool, reminding all who heard them that transformation is always possible, one pure intention at a time. Story 2. The Endless Stream. The endless stream high above the water temple's main courtyard, where ancient cedar trees reached toward heaven like silent prayers, flowed the Mukjin Nagare, the endless stream. Legend whispered that this sacred waterway had never ceased its gentle flow, not even during the great drought that lasted 7 years, nor through the harsh winters when all other waters froze solid as stone. Master Hayato discovered this stream during his darkest hour when a mysterious illness had begun consuming his body like slow fire. The disease had first appeared as a subtle weakness in his hands, barely noticeable as he performed his daily calligraphy. But over months, it spread through his limbs like creeping shadows, stealing his strength and leaving physicians baffled. "There is nothing more we can do," the imperial doctor had declared after his final examination. "The illness follows no pattern we understand. You have perhaps 1 season remaining." That autumn evening, as crimson leaves danced on bitter winds, Hayato climbed the temple's highest path. If death was to claim him, he wanted to spend his remaining days in contemplation beside the mysterious stream that had captured his curiosity since childhood. The endless stream began at what appeared to be a simple crack in an enormous granite boulder. From this tiny fissure emerged a flow of water so crystal clear it seemed like liquid light itself. The stream was narrow, barely wide enough for a child to step across, yet it flowed with unwavering consistency, carving a gentle path down the mountainside through moss-covered rocks and ancient tree roots. Master Hayato established a small meditation platform beside the stream's source and began what he believed would be his final practice. Each dawn, he would sit in zazen meditation, listening to the water's constant song. Each evening, he would trace the stream's path downward, observing how it navigated every obstacle with patient persistence. During his first week beside the stream, Hayato noticed something peculiar. Despite its modest size, the water never seemed to decrease in volume even during the hottest days when other streams ran low. More mysteriously, the stream's temperature remained constant cool, but not cold, refreshing without being shocking. "How do you maintain your flow?" he whispered to the water one morning, his voice weak from the illness's progression. To his surprise, an answer seemed to come through the stream's gentle murmur. "I do not try to flow. I simply am flow." Hayato dismissed this as fever-induced hallucination, but the message lingered in his consciousness like a pebble dropped into still water, creating ripples of contemplation. As days passed, Hayato began observing the stream with scientific curiosity. He noticed that when fallen leaves or small branches blocked its path, the water never fought against these obstacles. Instead, it would gently accumulate until it found the smallest gap, then flow through with quiet determination. If no gap existed, the water would patiently rise until it could flow over the obstruction, never losing its essential nature in the process. "You teach without words," Hayato murmured, his breathing labored from the illness's advance. "Show me your secret." That night, Hayato dreamed he was the stream itself. In his vision, he felt the earth's deep pulse feeding him strength from underground springs. He experienced the joy of movement without effort, the satisfaction of reaching destinations without forcing the peace of continuous purpose, without anxiety about the future. When he awakened at dawn, something had shifted. The crushing weight in his chest had lightened slightly and his breathing came easier. Confused but grateful, he returned to his meditation beside the stream. What changed? He asked the flowing water. You stopped trying to be strong and allowed yourself to simply be. This time, Hayato didn't question whether the voice was real, whether it came from the stream, his subconscious wisdom, or somewhere between the two mattered less than the truth it carried. Over the following weeks, Hayato developed a routine based on the stream's teachings. Instead of fighting his illness with desperate treatments and forced optimism, he began to work with his body the way water worked with obstacles, patiently, persistently, without violent resistance. When pain flared in his joints, he didn't clench against it, but breathed through it like water flowing around a stone. When weakness overwhelmed him, he rested completely like a stream, pooling in a natural basin, trusting that movement would return when conditions allowed. Most importantly, he stopped measuring his progress by dramatic improvements, and instead celebrated tiny, consistent hangers, a slightly deeper breath, a moment of pain-free movement, an hour of peaceful sleep. Healing is not a destination, he realized one morning as he watched the stream navigate a particularly complex series of rocks. It's a continuous process, like your eternal flow. As winter approached, Hayato made a disturbing discovery. Other streams throughout the region had begun to freeze their surfaces, turning to ice under the mountain's harsh breath. Yet, the endless stream continued flowing, its water remaining liquid and vital. Intrigued, he consulted the temple's ancient texts and found references to the stream dating back over 8 centuries. According to the records, the Mugen Nagare had indeed never frozen, never run dry, never ceased its flow under any circumstances. But how is this possible? He asked Master Sojun during one of the elders' visits to check on his condition. Some sources run deeper than others. The old master replied enigmatically, "The stream draws from waters that touch the earth's very heart, places where heat and pressure create conditions that cannot be easily disturbed by surface changes." Are you speaking of actual geology or spiritual metaphor? Master Sojun smiled. Perhaps both. What have you learned from your time here? Hayato considered the question carefully. "I've learned that consistency matters more than intensity. The stream doesn't rush violently down the mountain, yet it carves the deepest channels over time. It doesn't fight obstacles, but finds ways to flow around, over, or through them. Most importantly, it draws strength from sources I cannot see, but must trust exist." "And how has this knowledge affected your illness?" For the first time in months, Hayato smiled genuinely. "My condition has stabilized. Some days I feel stronger, some weaker, but I no longer experience the despair that was consuming me faster than any physical disease. I've learned to flow with my body's changes rather than rage against them." As winter deepened and snow began falling heavily throughout the mountain region, Hayato made his most profound discovery. During a particularly severe storm that lasted 3 days, he remained beside the stream, sharing its shelter beneath overhanging rocks. On the storm's second night, as wind howled through the peaks like angry spirits, Hayato noticed something extraordinary. The stream's flow had not diminished despite the freezing temperatures, but more remarkably, the water was actually warmer than usual. Removing his gloves, he dipped his hands into the stream and felt gentle heat radiating from the water, not scalding but comfortingly warm like a healing bath. "Your deep source," he whispered in understanding. "In the earth's coldest moments, you draw more heavily from the warmth beneath. When surface conditions become harsh, wise beings seek deeper resources," came the stream's reply through the wind's song. Hayato spent that night with his feet in the warm stream, feeling heat spread through his body and chase away the cold that had been settling in his bones. For the first time since his illness began, he slept through an entire night without pain. When the storm passed and Hayato descended to the main temple for medical examination, the results astounded everyone. His blood showed significant improvement, his strength had markedly increased, and the mysterious symptoms were retreating as mysteriously as they had appeared. "It's unprecedented," the physician declared. "Your body appears to be healing itself through some mechanism we don't understand." But Hayato understood. He had learned the stream's deepest lesson. True healing power comes not from fighting illness, but from connecting with the inexhaustible sources of vitality that exist beneath life's surface turbulence. Returning to the endless stream, he established a small hermitage where he began teaching others who suffered from chronic illnesses or felt disconnected from their body's natural healing wisdom. "Your body is like this stream," he would tell each student. "It possesses an innate intelligence that knows how to heal, how to flow around obstacles, how to draw strength from deep sources you may not consciously access. Your role is not to force healing, but to remove the barriers that prevent your natural healing stream from flowing freely." His teaching method was simple but profound. Students would spend hours observing the stream, learning to recognize their body's subtle rhythms, the way they learned to hear the water's constant song. They practiced moving with their symptoms rather than against them, resting when rest was needed, gently exercising when energy arose naturally. Most importantly, they learned to trust in resources they couldn't always see or understand, the body's incredible capacity for regeneration, the mind's ability to shift perspective, the spirit's access to strength that seemed to come from nowhere, yet proved inexhaustible when properly accessed. Years passed and Hayato's reputation as a healer spread throughout the region, yet he always insisted that he healed no one. He simply helped people rediscover their connection to their own endless stream of vitality. The miracle is not that sick bodies can heal, he would say. The miracle is that health constantly flows through us, and we need only learn to stop blocking its natural course. The endless stream continued its eternal flow, teaching countless souls that persistence without force, consistency without strain, and trust in unseen sources could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Its waters carried not just minerals from deep earth, but wisdom about the inexhaustible nature of life itself. And in the high mountains above the water temple, the sound of flowing water became a medicine more powerful than any herb, reminding all who listened that healing, like the stream itself, is not a destination to reach, but a continuous flowing that connects the deepest sources of strength with every moment of present experience. Story 3. Moon's Reflection. Moon's Reflection. Lady Akemi arrived at the water temple under cover of darkness, her face hidden beneath layers of silk veils that concealed more than just her identity. Once celebrated as the most beautiful woman in the imperial court, she now lived as a shadow of her former self, unable to bear the sight of her own reflection since the fire that had ravaged half her face 6 months prior. The flames had spared her life, but stolen what she believed was her essence, her beauty. The elaborate mirrors that once adorned her chambers now lay shattered, destroyed in fits of anguish. She could no longer attend court functions, receive visitors, or even walk freely through her own gardens without feeling the weight of pitying stares and whispered conversations. Beauty was my identity. She had confessed to her faithful servant Yuki during one particularly dark evening. Without it, I am nothing. It was Yuki who had suggested the water temple Sha Ring ancient stories of the Tsuki no Kagami, the moon's mirror pool, where countless souls had found peace with their true nature through the mysterious practice of lunar reflection meditation. The temple's night guardian, a serene monk named Brother Kenjiro, received Akemi without question or judgment. His own face bore the marks of smallpox from childhood, yet his eyes radiated such inner light that his scars seemed like badges of wisdom rather than blemishes. The moon's mirror pool awaits those who seek truth, he said simply, leading her through moonlit corridors toward the temple's most sacred space. The pool lay in a circular courtyard surrounded by white sand and perfectly manicured pine trees. Unlike the temple's other water features, this pool was fed by underground springs and remained perfectly still, creating a mirror so flawless it seemed to hold captured starlight. "Why do you come in darkness?" Brother Kenjiro asked gently as they approached the water's edge. "Because darkness hides what light reveals," Akemi replied, pulling her veils tighter around her damaged face. "And what does light reveal that you fear? The truth of what I have become." Brother Kenjiro nodded with understanding. "Then let us begin with what darkness reveals first. Look into the pool." Hesitantly, Akemi approached the water's edge. The pool's surface was so still and dark that she could see nothing but infinite depth, like staring into a well that reached the earth's center. "I see nothing," she whispered. "Exactly. In darkness, the pool shows us the void from which all things emerge and to which all things return. This emptiness is not absence, it is potential. It is the blank canvas upon which the moon will paint its truth." As if summoned by his words, clouds parted overhead, and the full moon's radiance began illuminating the courtyard. Instantly, the pool's surface transformed into a perfect mirror, reflecting the moon's silver light with such clarity that it seemed another moon float beneath the water's surface. "Now, what do you see?" Brother Kenjiro asked. "The moon, but it appears to be underwater. Is it the same moon as the one above?" Akemi studied both images carefully, the celestial body overhead and its perfect reflection below. They appear identical, yet one is in the sky and one is in the water. Which is real? The one in the sky, of course. The reflection is just an illusion. Brother Kenjiro smiled mysteriously. "Are you certain? Touch the moon in the pool." When Akemi reached toward the water's surface, her hand disrupted the reflection, scattering the moon's image into countless silver fragments that danced across the ripples before slowly reforming as the water settled. "The reflected moon can be touched, disturbed, fragmented," she observed. "Yet it always returns to wholeness when conditions allow. Tell me, what happens to the moon in the sky when you disturb its reflection?" Akemi looked upward. The celestial moon remained unchanged, serene, and lumin-aus. It's unaffected. So, we have two moons, one that can be disturbed but always returns, and one that remains forever untouched. Which is more real? This question haunted Akemi through her first night at the temple. She lay awake in the simple guest quarters, contemplating the paradox Brother Kenjiro had presented. Her logical mind insisted the sky moon was real and the reflection illusory, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something profound. The next evening, she returned to the moon's mirror pool with new questions. "Brother Kenjiro, I've been thinking about your lesson. If the reflection is not real, why does it matter what I see in the water?" "An excellent question, but first, tell me what you see tonight." This time, Akemi approached the pool with less hesitation. The moon's reflection appeared as clearly as before, but now she noticed something she had missed previously. Her own silhouette was also reflected in the water, standing beside the moon like a shadow companion. "I see the moon and myself." "Describe what you see of yourself." "Just a dark shape, a silhouette, no features, no details." "No, in the moonlight reflection I am simply a human form. And how does this make you feel?" Akemi paused, surprised by her answer. "Peaceful. In this reflection, I am not beautiful or ugly. I am simply present." "Now you begin to understand. Remove your veils." "No, I cannot. The pool sees only what the moon reveals. Tonight, the moon shows forms without judgment. Trust the moon's wisdom." With trembling hands, Akemi slowly unwrapped the silk veils that had become her constant companions. As the last layer fell away, she looked into the pool, expecting to see her scarred face illuminated by moonlight. Instead, she saw something extraordinary. The moon's reflection in the water was so bright it created a natural veil of silver light across the pool's surface. Her reflection appeared as a luminous figure. The damaged side of her face was visible, but it seemed to glow with the same ethereal light as the moon itself. I look different," she whispered. "You look as you truly are. The moon does not distinguish between scars and smooth skin. It simply illuminates whatever it touches with equal radiance." Over the following nights, Brother Kenjiro guided Akemi through increasingly profound reflections. Some evenings, when clouds partially obscured the moon, her reflection appeared fragmented and mysterious. Other nights, when the moon blazed full and clear, every detail of her face was visible, yet somehow transfigured by the ethereal light. "Why does my reflection change so much?" she asked during her fourth visit. "Because you are not one fixed thing," Brother Kenjiro explained. "The moon shows us that identity is fluid, constantly changing based on conditions, perspective, and the quality of light we allow to illuminate us. But people see my scars in daylight. They see the damage. What people see depends largely on what the why are trained to look for. Most people have been taught to see flaws, imperfections, deviations from arbitrary standards. But what happens when someone learns to see with moon vision, the ability to perceive the essential luminous nature that exists within all beings, regardless of surface conditions? On her 7th night at the temple, Akemi experienced a breakthrough that would transform her understanding forever. As she sat beside the pool in deep meditation, clouds moved across the moon, creating constantly shifting patterns of light and shadow on the water's surface. Her reflection appeared and disappeared, fragmented and reformed, brightened and dimmed in an endless dance of visibility and concealment. Watching this constant flux, she suddenly laughed a sound of genuine joy that surprised her with its spontaneity. "What amuses you?" Brother Kenjiro asked. "I've been trying to hold on to one fixed image of myself, first as beautiful, then as ugly. But the moon shows me that I am constantly changing like these shifting reflections. Sometimes I am visible, sometimes hidden, sometimes fragmented, sometimes whole. All of these are equally true and equally temporary. And how does this realization affect your relationship with your scars?" Akemi touched the damaged side of her face without flinching for the first time since the fire. "They are part of tonight's reflection, but not the whole reflection. Tomorrow night the moon might show me differently. The scars are real, but they are not my identity any more than perfect skin was my identity before." Brother Kenjiro nodded approvingly. "You are learning to see with the moon's eyes, but there is one more lesson the pool would teach you." "What is that?" "Look closely at the moon's reflection when the water is perfectly still, then look at the moon in the sky. Do you notice anything?" Akemi studied both images carefully. "They appear identical." "Exactly. When conditions are right, when the water is still or night is clear and the observer is present, the reflection and the reality become indistinguishable. The question, which is real, becomes meaningless." "I don't understand." "Your reflection in this pool, your appearance in daylight, other people's perceptions of you, your own changing self-image. These are all reflections of one essential truth that cannot be captured by any single image. You are the moon itself, luminous whole, unchanging in your essential nature, regardless of how clearly or dimly you appear to be reflected in the various pools of perception." This teaching penetrated Akemi's consciousness like moonlight through clouds. She began to understand that her identity crisis had stemmed from confusing temporary reflections with permanent reality. "The fire changed my reflection in the pool of social perception," she said slowly. "But it couldn't touch what I actually am. Now you see truly. Your scars are as real as your remaining smooth skin, as real as your kindness, your intelligence, your capacity for love and growth. They are part of your current reflection, but they are not you any more than your former beauty was you." During her remaining nights at the temple, Akemi practiced what Brother Kenjiro called reflection meditation. She would spend hours observing how her image in the pool changed with varying conditions, different moon phases passing clouds, gentle breezes that rippled the surface, her own shifting emotions. Each variation taught her something new about the fluid nature of identity and perception. She learned that trying to control how others saw her was like trying to prevent clouds from passing over the moon, an exercise in futility that only created suffering. More importantly, she discovered that her essential nature, her compassion, wisdom, humor, and capacity for love, remained constant like the moon itself, regardless of how clearly these qualities were reflected in any particular circumstance. On her final night at the temple, Akemi sat beside the moon's mirror pool, without veils, without fear, without the crushing weight of self-consciousness that had followed her like a shadow since the fire. "What will you do when you return to the world?" Brother Kenjiro asked. "I will remember that I am the moon, not the reflection," she replied. "When people see my scars, they are seeing one temporary reflection in one particular pool. Some will see beauty in this reflection, others will see damage. Both perceptions are reflections of their own inner conditions, not ultimate statements about my worth. And when you see yourself in mirrors, I will remember that mirrors show conditions, not essence. My face will heal and age and change throughout my life. These changes are like the moon's phases, natural transformations that reveal different aspects of an unchanging luminous core." Akemi returned to court transformed. She no longer hid her scars behind veils, nor did she flaunt them with defiant pride. Instead, she carried herself with the serene confidence of someone who had learned to distinguish between temporary reflections and eternal truth. Some courtiers initially reacted with shock or pity, but Akemi's inner radiance proved more compelling than her altered appearance. She had developed what Brother Kenjiro called moon presence, the ability to illuminate whatever situation she entered with genuine compassion and wisdom. Years later, many would seek her counsel, not despite her scars, but because of the depth of understanding they represented. She had learned that true beauty lies not in achieving perfect reflections, but in recognizing the luminous essence that no fire can burn, no time can diminish, and no external condition can ultimately touch. In her private chambers, she kept a small bowl of water positioned to catch moonlight through her window. Each night, she would gaze into this humble moon mirror and remember the profound truth learned at the water temple. We are not our reflections, but the eternal light that makes all reflections possible. The moon continued its ancient practice of shining equally on scarred and smooth faces alike, teaching anyone willing to look that acceptance begins with recognizing our own luminous nature forever whole, forever radiant, forever untouched by the temporary conditions that seem to define us. Story 4. The Sacred Floating Leaf. The Sacred Floating Leaf Master. Ichiro had carried the weight of his past for 37 years, like a stone lodged deep in his chest that grew heavier with each passing season. The memories of that terrible day in his youth when his carelessness had led to his younger brother's drowning followed him like shadows, coloring every moment of joy with shades of guilt and regret. Despite achieving recognition as one of the region's most skilled artisans, despite his marriage to a loving wife and the birth of 3 healthy children, despite the respect of his community and material abundance, Ichiro remained imprisoned by a single moment from his past that he could neither undo nor forget. You carry your brother's death like a sacred burden, his wife Midori had observed one autumn's evening as they watched their children play by the stream near their home. But perhaps there comes a time when even sacred burdens must be set down. Her words haunted Ichiro through the long winter months that followed. When spring arrived and the mountain paths became passable again, he found himself drawn to the legendary water temple, though he couldn't say exactly what he hoped to find there. The temple was in the midst of its annual Okuri Nagashi ceremony when Ichiro arrived, a ritual of release, where visitors wrote their burdens on paper boats and set them afloat on the temple's sacred stream. But Master Fumiko, the elderly nun who served as the temple's guide for troubled souls, took one look at Ichiro's tortured expression and led him away from the crowds. "Some burdens," she said gently, "require more than paper boats." She brought him to a secluded pool hidden deep within the temple grounds, surrounded by ancient ginkgo trees whose golden leaves carpeted the water's surface like scattered coins. The pool was perfectly circular, fed by a narrow stream that entered from the north and exited toward the south, creating a gentle current that kept the water fresh and clear. "This is the pool of letting go," Master Fumiko explained. "Here we practice the ancient art of Okuri Nagashi, not with paper boats, but with our hearts themselves." "I don't understand," Ichiro said, settling onto a meditation cushion beside the water's edge. "Tell me your burden first. What stone have you been carrying?" Ichiro's story poured out like water breaking through a dam. He spoke of that summer day 3 decades ago when he and his 10-year-old brother Taro had gone fishing at the river near their village. How he had become distracted by a group of older boys and their boastful tales. How he had left Taro alone by the water to join their adventures. How they had found his brother hours later face down in the current, his small fishing rod still clutched in his lifeless hands. "I was supposed to watch him," Ichiro whispered, tears falling into the pool. "Our parents trusted me. Taro trusted me. I failed them all." Master Fumiko listened without judgment, her weathered hands folded in meditation posture. When Ichiro's confession ended, she pointed to a large ginkgo leaf floating on the pool's surface. "Watch that leaf," she instructed. "Tell me what you observe." Ichiro studied the golden leaf as it drifted slowly across the water. "It floats. The current carries it toward the stream's exit." "What else?" It seems peaceful, natural." "Does the leaf struggle against the current?" "No, it moves with the flow." "Does it sink beneath the surface weighted down by its own nature?" "No, it floats easily." "Does it try to swim back upstream to the tree from which it fell?" Ichiro watched more carefully. Other leaves had fallen into the pool, creating a small flotilla of golden forms, all drifting in the same direction. None fought against the current or attempted to return to their origin. "No," he said, "they all flow toward the exit." And yet each leaf was once part of something larger. Each had a specific place on a specific branch. Each played a role in the tree's life. When autumn came and they fell, did they betray the tree? No. Falling is natural for leaves. So, their departure was not a failure, but a fulfillment of their purpose. Ichiro pondered this question as more leaves descended from the ancient trees, each one joining the peaceful procession across the pool's surface. "But leaves don't make choices," he protested. "They don't have the responsibility to stay attached." Master Fumiko smiled. "Don't they? What if I told you that this very tree," she gestured to the largest ginkgo, was planted here 400 years ago by a monk who had lost his only son. He watered it with his tears for decades, believing that his grief could somehow keep his child present in the world. What happened? For many years, he fought against the natural cycle. When leaves fell, he gathered them and tried to reattach them to branches. When winter came, he covered the tree to prevent dormancy. He was so afraid of letting go that he nearly killed the very thing he was trying to preserve. Ichiro felt a chill of recognition. How did he heal? By learning what you must learn. He spent one full autumn sitting beside this pool, watching leaves fall naturally. At first, each falling leaf felt like another death, another loss. But gradually, he began to see something different. What? That letting go is not abandonment. Watch the leaves more carefully. What happens to them after they leave the pool? Ichiro followed the stream's path with his eyes. The gentle current carried the leaves toward the temple's lower gardens, where they would eventually decompose and nourish new growth. They become part of something else, he said slowly. Exactly. The monk realized that his grief was like trying to hold falling leaves underwater. It prevented the natural transformation that allows love to continue in new forms. Master Fumiko reached into her robes and withdrew a single golden leaf perfectly preserved. This leaf fell from our tree 50 years ago. I pressed it in my meditation book because it taught me something important. She placed the leaf on the water's surface. Despite its age, it floated as gracefully as the fresh leaves joining their peaceful journey toward the stream's exit. Your brother Taro, she said gently. When did he truly die? 37 years ago in the river. No, when did your brother truly die? Ichiro struggled with the question. I don't understand. Taro died 37 years ago. But when did the joyful, playful, loving boy who was your brother cease to exist in your heart? The answer hit Ichiro like cold water. The day I started carrying guilt instead of love. The day I buried his memory under my shame. So, for 37 years, you have been holding your brother underwater, preventing him from floating naturally in your heart. You have transformed his death into a weight, rather than allowing it to become a blessing. Tears flowed freely down Ichiro's cheeks as this truth penetrated his understanding. How do I let him float? How do I release him properly? The same way the tree releases its leaves. With gratitude for the time they were connected with trust in the natural flow of life and death, and with understanding that letting go allows new forms of love to emerge. Master Fumiko instructed Ichiro in the practice of Kokoro no Okuri Nagashi, the floating of the heart. Each day for a moon cycle, he would come to the pool and place a leaf on its surface while contemplating a specific memory of Taro. The first memories were the most painful, the day of the drowning, the funeral, his parents' grief. When Ichiro placed leaves for these memories, they seemed to sink slightly weighted by his anguish. Don't try to change the memories, Master Fumiko advised. Simply let them float as they are. Gradually, as the days passed, other memories emerged. Taro's laughter during their games of hide and seek, his excitement when catching his first fish, his habit of bringing injured animals home for healing, his unconditional trust in his older brother. These memories made their leaves float more buoyantly, and Ichiro began to understand that his guilt had been preventing him from accessing the full treasury of love he carried for his brother. Guilt is like holding leaves underwater, Master Fumiko explained. It keeps the beautiful memories submerged beneath the painful ones. On the ceremony's final day, Master Fumiko handed Ichiro a special leaf, one carved from sacred wood and inscribed with a prayer. "This represents your guilt itself," she said. "Are you ready to let it float?" Ichiro held the wooden leaf, feeling its weight. For 37 years, this guilt had been his constant companion, his way of staying connected to Taro, his proof that he cared about his brother's death. If I let go of the guilt, how will I honor Taro's memory? By carrying love instead of weight, by allowing his spirit to inspire joy rather than suffer under the burden of your regret. With trembling hands, Ichiro placed the carved leaf on the water's surface. It floated perfectly, joining the other leaves in their journey toward transformation. As he watched it drift away, Ichiro felt something unprecedented. The weight in his chest began to dissolve, replaced by a warmth that spread through his entire being. "I can feel him," he whispered in wonder, "not as pain, but as presence. Your brother has been waiting 37 years for you to let him float in your heart, rather than sink under your guilt," Master Fumiko said. "Now he can move naturally through your memories, bringing joy instead of suffering." Ichiro spent the remainder of his retreat learning to cultivate what the temple called floating love, the ability to hold precious memories lightly enough that they could move freely through consciousness without becoming trapped in pools of regret. When he returned home, his family immediately noticed the transformation. The shadow that had haunted his eyes for decades had lifted, replaced by a gentle radiance that reminded his wife of the young man she had fallen in love with years ago. "Papa seems different," his youngest daughter observed one evening as they sat by their local stream. "Different how?" Midori asked. "Lighter, like he's floating instead of sinking." Ichiro smiled at his daughter's intuitive wisdom. He had indeed learned to float, to carry love without drowning in it, to honor the past without being imprisoned by it, to let go without letting go completely. In his workshop, he began creating a new form of art, delicate wooden leaves inscribed with poems about impermanence and love. Each piece seemed to capture the essence of floating, reminding viewers that beauty lies not in permanent possession, but in graceful release. People throughout the region began commissioning these floating leaves as gifts for those struggling with loss, grief, or guilt. Ichiro would always include a small note explaining the water temple's teaching. Love becomes lighter when we let it float freely in our hearts. Years passed, and Ichiro established an annual ceremony at his local temple, teaching others the practice of Kokoro no Okuri Nagashi. Each autumn, families would gather by the water to release their burdens and honor their loved ones through floating meditation. The art of letting go, Ichiro would tell participants, is not about forgetting or abandoning those we love. It's about allowing our love to move naturally like leaves on water, carrying blessings rather than burdens. The golden leaves continued their eternal dance, falling, floating, transforming, teaching countless souls that true he-ailing comes not from holding on more tightly, but from learning to love with open hands that allow both arrival and departure to flow naturally through the stream of existence. At the water temple, the pool of letting go remained a sacred space where the ancient ginkgo trees continued dropping their wisdom onto still waters, each leaf a teacher, each release a prayer, each floating moment a reminder that love itself is eternal. Only our ways of carrying it must sometimes change. Story 5. The Sound of Dripping. The Sound of Dripping Merchant. Takeshi arrived at the water temple in a state of complete mental exhaustion, his mind racing like a wild horse that had forgotten how to rest. For months, his thoughts had churned without cease, calculations, worries, plans, regrets, creating such internal chaos that sleep had become impossible, and peace a distant memory. The successful tea trader had built his fortune through meticulous attention to detail and constant mental activity. Every decision required analysis, every conversation demanded strategy, every moment of silence filled him with anxiety about opportunities being missed or disasters going unnoticed. "My mind has become my enemy," he confessed to his elderly mother during his last visit home. "I cannot stop thinking, cannot find stillness. The thoughts multiply like rabbits, each one demanding attention." Perhaps, she had suggested gently, it is time to learn the art of listening instead of thinking. Her words had led him to the water temple, specifically to Master Reigen, a monk renowned for his teachings on mental tranquility through the ancient practice of Shizuku no meditation, the meditation of single drops. Master Reigen received Takeshi in a small meditation hall where the only sound was a mysterious, rhythmic dripping echoing from somewhere within the walls. "What brings you to seek silence?" the master asked, though the constant mental agitation was visible in Takeshi's restless movements and darting eyes. "My mind has become a marketplace where thousands of merchants shout simultaneously," Takeshi replied. "I can no longer distinguish important thoughts from meaningless chatter. The noise is driving me toward madness." Master Reigen nodded knowingly. "Come, let me show you something that may quiet your inner marketplace." The master led Takeshi through a series of corridors deeper into the temple's heart, where the architecture grew simpler and sounds became more pronounced. They passed several meditation halls where different water sounds created varying atmospheres, flowing streams, gentle waterfalls, lapping waves. Finally, they reached a small circular chamber carved directly from the mountain's rock. The space was utterly simple: stone floor, stone walls, stone ceiling. No decorations, no distractions, no windows. The only furnishing was a single meditation cushion positioned directly beneath a tiny opening in the ceiling. From this opening, water dripped with perfect regularity. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop fell exactly 4 seconds after the previous one, striking a small depression worn smooth in the stone floor over countless centuries. "This," Master Reigen said, "is the chamber of single sounds. Here we practice the most fundamental form of meditation, learning to listen to one thing completely. But it's just dripping," Takeshi said, already feeling impatient with the simplicity. "Exactly. Your mind is accustomed to complexity, to multiple simultaneous inputs, to constant change and stimulation. This simple dripping will either drive you to distraction or teach you profound peace. There is no middle ground." Master Reigen instructed Takeshi to sit on the cushion and simply listen to the dripping for 1 hour. No counting, no analyzing, no trying to understand or control anything. Just pure listening. Focus only on the sound itself. The master explained, "When thoughts arise, and they will gently return your attention to the next drip. Nothing else matters." Within minutes of beginning, Takeshi understood the challenge. The dripping seemed almost insultingly simple, yet his mind rebelled against such singular focus. Between each 4-second interval, dozens of thoughts would race through his consciousness: business concerns, family matters, judgments about the exercise itself. Drip. Did I close the warehouse properly before leaving? Drip. This seems like a waste of time. Drip. I should be calculating next season's inventory. Drip. My back hurts from sitting. Drip. How much longer must I endure this? Each drip became a battle between his trained tendency toward mental complexity and the practice's demand for absolute simplicity. After what felt like hours but was likely only 20 minutes, Takeshi stood abruptly. Master Reigen, I cannot do this. My mind will not cooperate. The master, who had been waiting patiently outside the chamber, smiled with understanding. The dripping water has revealed your mind's true condition. It cannot rest because it has forgotten how to listen to just one thing at a time. But surely meditation should be more sophisticated than listening to dripping water. Should it? Tell me, can you hear the space between the drips? The space between each drip lies 4 seconds of silence. Your mind fills this silence with noise. But what if you learn to hear the silence itself? This question intrigued Takeshi despite his frustration. When Master Reigen led him back to the chamber, he tried listening differently, not just to the sound of each drop, but to the quiet moments between sounds. Drip, silence, drip, silence, drip, silence. Gradually, Takeshi began to notice that the spaces between drips were not empty, but full of potential, like the pause between breaths or the moment between heartbeats. These silent intervals became as interesting as the drips themselves. I think I understand, he told Master Reigen after his second session. The dripping creates rhythm, and rhythm creates space for rest-tea. You begin to learn, but there are deeper lessons the dripping would teach you. Over the following days, Master Reigen introduced Takeshi to increasingly subtle aspects of drip meditation. He learned to distinguish between different types of listening surface hearing versus deep listening anxious attention versus relaxed awareness, forcing concentration versus allowing natural focus. Your mind has 3 layers. The master explained during one of their evening discussions. Surface thoughts which come and go like weather. Deeper currents which carry your habitual patterns and emotions. And at the bottom, fundamental stillness which is always present but often hidden beneath the upper layer's activity. How does dripping water reveal these layers? Surface thoughts react to each drip with commentary, judgment, impatience. Deeper currents might associate the sound with childhood memories, feelings of peace or agitation, stories about what meditation should accomplish. But fundamental stillness simply receives each drop as it comes without addition or subtraction. Takeshi practiced identifying these different layers within his own listening experience. He noticed that his surface thoughts were indeed like constantly changing weather, sometimes peaceful, sometimes stormy, always temporary. His deeper currents carried familiar patterns: the need to achieve, the fear of wasting time, the habit of analyzing rather than experiencing. But occasionally, in brief moments between thoughts, he caught glimpses of what Master Reigen called fundamental stillness, a quality of awareness that simply existed without agenda, like clear sky beyond passing clouds. The dripping is teaching me about my own mind. Takeshi realized during his 5th day of practice, each drop is like a thought. It arises, makes its impact, then disappears. The silence between drops is like the awareness that witnesses thoughts without being disturbed by them. Now, you understand why this simple sound can be the most profound teacher, Master Reigen replied. It shows you the difference between the mind that thinks and the awareness that knows thinking is happening. As his practice deepened, Takeshi discovered that the dripping revealed even more subtle teachings. He learned about patience, how forcing his mind to focus created tension while gently returning attention to the sound created ease. He learned about acceptance, how fighting against distracting thoughts made them stronger while acknowledging them with kindness allowed them to pass naturally. Most importantly, he learned about presence. Each drip occurred only in the present moment. By syncing his attention with this natural rhythm, he began experiencing extended periods of pure nowness, moments when past regrets and future anxieties simply didn't exist. The dripping is like a metronome for consciousness, he explained to Master Reigen. It trains the mind to stay present instead of wandering into mental time travel. During his 2nd week at the temple, Takeshi experienced what Master Reigen called drop consciousness, a state where his awareness became so aligned with the dripping rhythm that the distinction between listener and sound began to dissolve. In this state, he wasn't listening to dripping water. He was the listening itself. His awareness expanded to include not just the sound, but the entire chamber, the mountain around it, the sky above, the earth below. Yet, paradoxically, this expanded awareness felt incredibly simple and natural. I understand now why you call it the meditation of single sounds, he told the master afterward. When you truly listen to one thing completely, you discover that everything is contained within it. Explain this further. The dripping sound contains the rain that originally fell, the stone through which it filtered the centuries of time that carved this chamber, the silence that gives the sound meaning, my own awareness that receives it. One simple drip holds the entire universe. Master Reigen smiled. You have learned the secret of deep listening. Now you must discover how to carry this understanding back into your daily life. This transition proved challenging. When Takeshi returned to his business activities, his mind immediately began reverting to its old patterns of scattered attention and anxious thinking. But now he had a tool for returning to center. Several times each day he would pause and listen for any rhythmic sound available. His own heartbeat, his breathing footsteps on the path, the ticking of his pocket watch. Each sound became an opportunity to practice drop consciousness, returning his scattered awareness to singular focus. The marketplace of my mind still gets noisy, he explained to Master Reigen during a return visit months later. But now I know how to find the quiet chamber within myself where I can listen to just one thing at a time. His business continued to prosper, but his relationship with success transformed completely. Instead of driving himself toward achievements through mental force, he learned to work with natural rhythms, allowing inspiration and rest to alternate like the dripping water's pattern of sound and silence. Most remarkably, his capacity for presence began affecting everyone around him. Employees noticed that meetings with Takeshi had become more focused and productive. Family members observed that he truly listened when they spoke, giving them his complete attention instead of multitasking mentally. "You seem different," his wife commented one evening. "More here. I learned to listen to one thing at a time," he replied simply. Takeshi established a small meditation space in his home, featuring a simple water feature that dripped with the same 4-second rhythm as the temple chamber. Each morning and evening, he would spend time in drop consciousness, maintaining his connection to the profound simplicity he had discovered. Years later, when other merchants sought his advice for managing business stress, Takeshi would bring them to his meditation room and teach them the practice of listening to single sounds. Success in business, he would tell them, comes not from thinking more thoughts, but from thinking clearly. And clear thinking arises from a mind that knows how to rest in simple awareness. The dripping water became his greatest teacher, showing him that profound peace was always available in the present moment, hidden within the simplest experiences for those who learned the art of complete listening. At the water temple, the Chamber of Single Sounds continued its ancient practice, teaching countless souls that the path to mental tranquility lay not in complicated techniques, but in the radical simplicity of receiving each moment, each drop, each breath, each heartbeat with complete presence and acceptance. The sound of dripping water became a universal medicine for restless minds, proving that sometimes the most profound teachings come not through elaborate philosophies, but through the patient practice of listening to what is already here, drop by perfect drop in the eternal rhythm of existence itself. Master Reigen would often remind students, the mind that can find peace in one simple sound can find peace anywhere. The dripping water doesn't create tranquility, it reveals the tranquility that was always present, waiting to be heard, beneath the noise of unnecessary thinking. Story 6. Lotus from Mud Scholar. Yoshida Naomi arrived at the water temple during the darkest period of her life, carrying shame so profound it felt like poison coursing through her veins. Once celebrated as the most promising student at the Imperial Academy, she had fallen from grace after a scandal involving falsified research that destroyed her reputation, her career, and her sense of self-worth. The discovery of her academic dishonesty had been swift and merciless. Colleagues who once respected her now whispered behind closed doors. Students who had looked up to her turned away in disappointment. Her family, proud of her scholarly achievements for decades, now struggled to mention her name without embarrassment. "I am ruined," she had written in her final letter to the academy. "My life's work has become a monument to deception. There is no path back from such disgrace." It was her former mentor, Professor Tanaka, who suggested the water temple's legendary lotus pool, where monks practiced the ancient art of transformation meditation. "Sometimes," he had written in his reply, "the deepest mud produces the most beautiful flowers." Master Shogun, the temple's expert in lotus wisdom, received Naomi beside the sacred pond that had become the destination for countless souls seeking rebirth from their own darkness. The circular pool was perhaps 30 meters across its murky waters, dark as strong tea filled with thick mud that had accumulated over centuries. "Why do you come here?" Master Shogun asked, though Naomi's defeated posture and hollow eyes told much of her story. "I have destroyed everything I built," Naomi whispered. "My reputation, my integrity, my purpose. I am like rotten fruit that poisons everything it touches." "Interesting. You speak of yourself as rotten fruit, yet you have come to a place where lotuses bloom. Tell me, what do you know of the lotus flower? Very little, Master. Only that it grows in water." Master Shogun smiled mysteriously. Come, let me show you something that may surprise you." He led her to the edge of the pool, where dozens of magnificent lotus flowers floated on the surface like perfect pink and white jewels. Each bloom was pristine, radiant, with petals so delicate they seemed crafted from silk and light itself. "Beautiful, are they not?" the master asked. "Exquisite. They seem almost too perfect for this world. Now observe more carefully. Look beneath the flowers into the water itself." As Naomi's eyes adjusted, she could see thick stems disappearing into the murky depths. The water was indeed dark, almost opaque, clearly rich with decomposed organic matter. "The water is quite muddy," she observed. "Precisely. These flowers, which you call exquisite and perfect, emerge from the thickest, darkest mud imaginable. In fact, the more decomposed organic matter in the mud, the more spectacular the blooms become." "But how is that possible? Shouldn't beautiful things emerge from beautiful conditions?" "That is the lotus's first teaching. True beauty does not avoid darkness. It transforms darkness into light." Master Shogun invited Naomi to spend a full day simply observing the lotus pond, noting everything she witnessed. At dawn, she watched tightly closed buds emerging from the water's surface. As the sun rose, these buds slowly opened into full bloom, revealing layer upon layer of perfect petals. Most remarkably, despite growing from muddy water, the lotus petals remained completely clean. Water droplets rolled off them like mercury off glass, unable to stain or contaminate their pristine surfaces. How do they stay so clean while growing in such murky conditions? Naomi asked when Master Shogun returned at sunset. The lotus possesses a quality called self-purification. Its leaves and petals are structured in such a way that impurities cannot adhere to them. The mud provides nourishment, but the flower's essential nature remains untouched by the mud's darkness. "I don't understand the relevance to my situation." "Don't you? You speak of yourself as ruined, poisoned, permanently stained by your mistakes. But what if your essential nature, like the lotus, cannot be permanently contaminated by the mud of circumstance?" That evening, Master Shogun began teaching Naomi the philosophical foundations of lotus meditation. In our tradition, we understand that consciousness has three qualities. It grows through darkness, purifies through adversity, and blooms through acceptance of imperfect conditions. But my mistakes were real. The harm I caused was real. How can I simply pretend that darkness doesn't matter? Who suggested pretending the lotus doesn't deny the mud's existence? It uses the mud as essential nourishment. Your mistakes, your shame, your current darkness, these are not obstacles to overcome, but raw materials for transformation. Over the following days, Master Shogun guided Naomi through increasingly profound contemplations. She learned that lotus roots must push through thick layers of mud to reach sunlight, that this struggle actually strengthens the plant structure, and that the richest mud produces the most resilient flowers. Your academic dishonesty. The master suggested during one session what motivated it originally. Naomi winced at the direct question. Fear. Fear that my research wasn't good enough, that I would disappoint people, that I would be revealed as less brilliant than everyone believed. So, the mud from which your current suffering grows is fear-based action. And what has this mud taught you? That deception ultimately destroys everything it touches. That authentic work, even if imperfect, has more value than brilliant fraud. Continue. that reputation built on false foundations will inevitably collapse. That the respect I craved could only be genuine if I had earned it honestly. These insights are they valuable, extremely valuable. They are truths I never would have learned without experiencing this failure. Then your mud has already begun producing wisdom. But wisdom alone is not the lotus flower. What must happen next? This question puzzled Naomi for several days. She continued observing the pond, noting how lotus plants went through cycles, emerging, blooming, withering, sinking back into the mud, then emerging again with new growth. The cycle doesn't end with learning. She finally realized the lotus doesn't just grow from mud once and then remain forever bloomed. It continuously transforms seasons after seasons, using each period of darkness to nourish new emergence. Now you begin to understand. Your current shame and failure are not permanent conditions, they are one season in an ongoing cycle of transformation. What would it mean to honor this season while preparing for the next emergence? Master Shogun introduced Naomi to the practice of mud meditation, consciously dwelling in her current darkness without trying to escape it, but also without drowning in it. Feel the weight of your shame completely, he instructed during one session. Explore its texture, its depth, its various flavors. But remember, you are not the mud. You are consciousness experiencing mud, just as the lotus is not the mud, but draws life from it. This practice initially felt torturous. Naomi had been trying to flee from her shame to minimize or rationalize it. Deliberately dwelling in the sensation of disgrace seemed masochistic, but gradually she began noticing subtle changes. The shame, when fully experienced rather than resisted, began revealing layers of understanding. Beneath the surface, guilt lay deeper truths about her relationship with achievement, approval, and self-worth. I built my identity on being exceptional, she confided to Master Shogun. When I feared I might be ordinary, I chose deception over truth. The real mud isn't just my dishonesty. It's my attachment to an image of perfection. And what grows from recognizing this deeper mud? Humility, compassion for other people's struggles with inadequacy, understanding that everyone carries fears about not being enough. These qualities, humility, compassion, understanding, what do they remind you of? Naomi looked out at the lotus pond, where evening light was illuminating the flowers with golden radiance. They remind me of beauty, a different kind of beauty than I pursued before, more genuine, more connected to real human experience. The lotus emerging from mud, Master Shogun said gently. Your new understanding, born from your darkest experience, has a quality that your previous achievements lacked. As weeks passed, Naomi began experiencing what the temple called lotus consciousness, the ability to remain rooted in difficult circumstances while simultaneously reaching toward light and growth. She started writing again, but this time her work focused on the psychology of academic pressure and the human costs of perfectionism. Her research was careful, honest, deeply personal. She interviewed other scholars who had experienced failure and studied the relationship between vulnerability and authentic achievement. This work feels different, she told Master Shogun. It's not about proving my brilliance. It's about contributing something genuinely useful to human understanding. And how does this work relate to your original shame? The shame is still present, but it's become composted. It nourishes my compassion and keeps me honest. I don't want to escape it anymore. I want to use it constructively." During her final month at the temple, Naomi experienced a profound shift during meditation. Sitting beside the lotus pond at dawn, she watched a new bud emerging from the water and suddenly understood her true relationship with her past mistakes. "The bud doesn't apologize for growing from mud," she whispered to herself. "It doesn't spend energy wishing it had grown from cleaner soil. It simply uses whatever nutrients are available and reaches naturally toward light." When the flower opened, fully revealing layer upon layer of perfect petals, Naomi felt tears of recognition flowing down her cheeks. "My shame has become my teacher. My failure has become my foundation. My darkness has become my depth." Master Shogun found her there as the sun reached its zenith. What have you discovered? That transformation doesn't mean escaping the mud or pretending it doesn't exist. It means learning to bloom through it, to let it nourish rather than poison me. And your academic career will be different now, built on truth rather than image, focused on serving understanding rather than accumulating recognition. The lotus that emerges from this mud will be more beautiful than any flower that might have grown from easier soil. Naomi returned to academic life transformed. She accepted a position at a smaller university, teaching courses on research ethics and the psychology of failure. Her honest discussions of her own mistakes created profound connections with students struggling with their own perfectionism and fears of inadequacy. Her published research on academic integrity, written from hard-won personal experience, became widely respected for its depth and authenticity. Former colleagues who had shunned her gradually recognized that her fall and recovery had produced wisdom unavailable to those who had never faced such challenges. Professor Naomi has become more valuable as a teacher because of her failures, not despite them, one student wrote in an evaluation. She shows us that integrity can be rebuilt and that mistakes can become foundations for our deeper truth. Years later, Naomi established an annual retreat at the water temple for academics experiencing professional crisis. Each year, she would bring troubled scholars to the lotus pond and share the teaching that had transformed her own understanding. The lotus, she would tell them, doesn't bloom in spite of the mud, it blooms because of the mud. Your current darkness, however painful, contains the nutrients for a more authentic and beautiful emergence than anything you could have achieved through easier paths. The lotus pond continued its ancient cycles, teaching countless souls that transformation requires not the absence of difficulty, but the wisdom to use difficulty as compost for growth. Each flower that bloomed from the murky depths carried the same message. The deepest beauty emerges not from perfect conditions, but from the courageous choice to grow toward light while remaining grounded in the full truth of human experience. In the temple's evening prayers, monks would chant, "May all beings discover their lotus nature, the capacity to transform the mud of suffering into the flower of wisdom, the ability to remain pure while drawing nourishment from imperfect conditions, the courage to bloom again and again through every season of darkness and light." The lotuses themselves offered silent testimony to this possibility, their pristine petals catching starlight above waters that held the rich, dark earth of countless transformations. Story 7. The Sacred Water Circle. The Sacred Water Circle. When Master Chen arrived at the water temple carrying the grief of his entire village, he believed his burden was too heavy for any individual healing practice to address. Behind him followed a sorrowful procession, 12 families whose children had perished in the flooding that devastated their mountain community 6 months prior. The disaster had claimed 17 young lives when the river, swollen by unprecedented rains, swept through the village school during afternoon lessons. Entire families were shattered, the community's future seemingly drowned alongside their children. Survivors moved through daily routines like ghosts united only by a shared trauma that no one knew how to heal. "We have tried everything," Master Chen explained to Abbess Keiko, the temple's elder who specialized in collective healing practices. Individual counseling, memorial ceremonies, meditation retreats. Each family remains isolated in their private anguish. Our community is dying as surely as our children died. Abbess Keiko listened with the deep compassion that comes from decades of witnessing human suffering. At 73, she had guided countless groups through the mysterious process of communal transformation using the temple's most sacred practice, the Enno Mizuwa, or Sacred Water Circle. "Grief shared is grief transformed," she said gently. "But first, your people must learn to trust the circle's wisdom." She led the delegation to a perfectly circular courtyard D, hidden in the temple's heart, surrounded by ancient stone walls, carved with intricate flowing patterns. At the courtyard's center lay a shallow pool exactly 12 meters across, fed by 12 streams that entered from equally spaced points around the perimeter. The pool's most remarkable feature was its design. The bottom was carved with a spiral pattern that created gentle currents, causing water to flow in a continuous clockwise circle. Small floating lotus petals caught in this current would travel the full circumference before flowing toward the pool's center, where a 13th stream carried them away. This is the Wa no Mizumi, the circle pool. Abbess Keiko explained. "Here we practice the ancient art of shared healing where individual sorrows become collective wisdom." The 12 families gathered uncertainly around the pool's edge, each group maintaining careful distance from the others. Despite sharing the same devastating loss, they had become isolated by their private interpretations of grief, some angry, some despairing, some numbly resigned. "I don't understand how sitting in a circle will bring back our children," said Mrs. Yamamoto, whose 8-year-old daughter Yuki had been among the victims. "It will not," Abbess Keiko replied honestly, "but it may help you discover that your love for them need not die with them." The abbess began by explaining the pool's symbolic design. Water enters from 12 sources, but becomes one body of flowing unity. Each stream maintains its individual character while contributing to the whole. Similarly, each family's grief is unique, yet all flow into the same pool of human love and loss. She instructed each family to sit beside one of the 12 inlet streams, close enough to hear their water's distinctive sound, but positioned to see all other families around the circle's circumference. "Your first practice," she said, "is simply to witness. Observe your own stream, but also observe the others. Notice how different waters can flow into shared space without losing their essential nature." This initial exercise revealed immediate differences. Some streams flowed quickly and turbulently, mirroring the intense anger certain families felt toward fate authorities or themselves. Others moved slowly and steadily, reflecting the deep sadness that characterized other families' grieving process. A few barely trickled, representing the emotional numbness that protected some survivors from overwhelming pain. "Why do the streams flow so differently?" asked Mr. Watanabe, who had lost twin sons in the tragedy. "Each carries different minerals from its source, travels through different terrain, encounters different obstacles," Abbess Keiko explained. "Your grief, like these waters, flows according to your family's unique conditions, your relationship with your child, your previous experiences with loss, your cultural and spiritual resources." "But our losses are the same," protested Mrs. Sasaki. "We all lost children in the same disaster. Are they the same? Describe your daughter to the circle." Mrs. Sasaki spoke of her shy, bookish girl who loved painting watercolors and dreamed of becoming an artist. As she shared these memories, other families began recognizing the distinct personality being honored. One by one, each family was invited to speak about their lost child, not about the death, but about the life. The circle heard about young athletes and budding musicians, children who collected insects and others who told elaborate fairy tales, quiet observers and irrepressible comedians. "Now you begin to see," Abbess Keiko said as the final family finished sharing. 17 unique streams of life entered the world through your families. The flood took their physical forms, but what happens to the streams themselves? This question launched the second phase of practice. Families were instructed to place small offerings in their respective streams, flower stones, written messages, and watch how the Circle R current carried these gifts around the entire pool. Mrs. Yamamoto placed a small watercolor painting her daughter had created, waterproofed and weighted so it would float. As the circular current carried Yuki's artwork past each family's position, something remarkable occurred. Other families began recognizing their own children in the painting's innocent beauty. Watanabe contributed his twins' favorite wooden toys, small carved animals they had played with constantly. As these floated around the circle, families remembered their own children's beloved possessions, their games and laughter. "The offerings are teaching us something," observed Mrs. Tanaka, whose son had been the class clown. "Our children's essences don't belong only to our individual families. They touch everyone in the circle." "Continue this observation," Abbess Keiko encouraged. Over the following days, the families developed increasingly complex practices around the sacred water circle. They began creating collaborative offerings, poems written jointly, meals prepared together and shared beside the pool group paintings that required each family's contribution. Most powerfully, they started recognizing how their children's individual qualities had created a kind of spiritual ecosystem. The shy artists had inspired the confident performers. The gentle caregivers had nurtured the adventurous explorers. The quiet thinkers had balanced the energetic doers. Our children were never just individual streams, Master Chen realized during the fourth day's reflection. They were part of a flowing community that made all of them more complete. The breakthrough came during the circle meditation ceremony on the practice's 7th evening. As sunset light danced across the pool's surface, all 12 families sat in silence, watching their various offerings float in the eternal circular current. Mrs. Yamamoto's watercolor painting drifted past Mr. Watanabe's wooden animals, which followed behind Mrs. Tanaka's origami cranes, which moved alongside flowers from other families. Instead of 12 separate memorial objects, the current had created one flowing mandala of remembrance. "I see them," whispered Mrs. Sasaki suddenly. "I see all our children playing together in the current." Other families began nodding in recognition. The flowing circle had become a visible metaphor for their children's continued existence, not as individual ghosts trapped in private family grief, but as part of an eternal community of love that included all the families present. "The children are not lost," Master Chen said with dawning wonder. "They have simply moved from individual streams into the greater flowing circle. They remain present, but now they belong to all of us." This insight triggered what Abbess Keiko called circle consciousness, the recognition that individual healing occurs through collective practice, that private grief transforms through shared witnessing, that love multiplies when it flows between heities rather than remaining isolated. The families began experiencing their children differently. Instead of each family grieving one lost child, they found themselves caring for the memory and spirit of all 17 children. Mrs. Yamamoto started teaching art classes in honor of all the children's creativity. Mr. Watanabe organized sports activities celebrating all their playful spirits. "We have become a family of families," Mrs. Tanaka observed. "Our children live on through our shared love for all of them." The transformation extended beyond grief processing into practical community building. Families began sharing resources, collaborating on childcare for surviving children, supporting each other through ongoing challenges. The sacred water circle had created bonds stronger than those destroyed by the flood. During their final ceremony, each family contributed water from their home wells to the circle pool, a ritual symbolizing their commitment to ongoing connection. The mingled waters swirled together, creating new patterns while maintaining the eternal circular flow. "What will you do when you return home?" Abbess Keiko asked. "Create our own sacred circle," Master Chen replied. "We will build a memorial pool in our village square, designed with the same circular flow. Every month, families will gather to share stories, support each other, and remember that our children's love continues flowing through our community." Years later, the village's memorial circle became a place of pilgrimage for communities dealing with collective trauma. The circular pool, fed by 17 small streams representing each lost child, demonstrated how individual grief could transform into collective wisdom. Visitors learned the practice of circle healing, the understanding that some wounds are too large for any individual to carry alone, but become manageable when shared among people committed to mutual support and remembrance. Grief is like water. Abbess Keiko would tell each new group that came to learn the practice. When confined to individual containers, it can become stagnant and poisonous. But when allowed to flow in community circles, it nourishes new growth and creates environments where love continues to flourish. The sacred water circle at the temple continued teaching countless communities that healing multiplies when shared, that individual transformation serves collective well-being, and that the deepest losses become bearable when processed through this eternal flow of communal love and support. In the temple's evening prayers, monks would chant, "May all beings discover the circle's wisdom, that we heal individually through community support, that private sorrows transform through shared witnessing, that love flows strongest when it moves between hearts, rather than remaining isolated in private grief." The circular pool continued its eternal flow, carrying offerings from thousands of families who had learned that the sacred water of healing becomes most powerful when it moves through communities united by compassion, mutual support, and the shared understanding that love transcends even the deepest losses. Bowl's Story 8, The Last Morning. The last morning, Jew elder Hiroshi arrived at the water temple as the seasons turned toward his final winter, carrying the peculiar numbness that settles over those who believe they have already experienced everything life has to offer. At 78, the retired calligraphy master had achieved every goal he had set for himself: recognition for his artistic brilliance, financial security, a loving family, the respect of his peers. Yet, in recent years, an inexplicable emptiness had begun consuming his days. Colors seemed muted, flavors bland, conversations hollow. Even his beloved art, once a source of profound joy, had become mere mechanical repetition. "I feel like I am sleepwalking through my remaining time," he had confessed to his daughter. "Nothing moves me anymore." The diagnosis of a slow-progressing eye illness had brought strange relief rather than despair. "At least now I have a reasons for this deadness inside," he told the physician. "I thought perhaps I had simply lived too long." It was his oldest friend, Master Noboru, who suggested the water temple's morning practice, led by Sister Uma, a nun renowned for teaching the art of micro-awareness, finding the infinite within the infinitesimal. Sister Ume received Hiroshi in the pre-dawn darkness beside a simple bamboo pavilion overlooking the temple's herb garden. She appeared to be around his own age, yet her eyes held a quality of freshness that seemed almost childlike in its capacity for wonder. "What brings you to seek the morning's teaching?" she asked, though Hiroshi's weary demeanor spoke volumes about his spiritual condition. "I have lost the ability to feel alive," he said simply. "Food has no taste. Beauty brings no joy. Achievements feel meaningless. I exist, but I do not live." Sister nodded with understanding. "You suffer from one of the most common ailments of later life experience, saturation. You have accumulated so many memories, so many sensations that new experiences cannot penetrate the layers of familiarity. Is there a cure? Perhaps. But it requires learning to see with beginner's eyes, to find the miraculous within the mundane. Are you willing to wake before dawn for the next 7 mornings?" Hiroshi agreed, though privately he doubted that any simple practice could restore the vibrancy he had lost. Sister Ume instructed him to arrive each morning 30 minutes before sunrise, bringing only an open mind and willingness to observe closely. The next morning, Hiroshi found Sister sitting motionless in the garden, her attention focused intensely on something he couldn't immediately identify. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he began to perceive tiny jewels of water coating every surface: grass blades, flower petals, spider webs, stone pathways. "Morning dew," Sister said softly without moving her gaze. "Each drop a perfect world unto itself." "I've seen dew before," Hiroshi replied, settling beside her on the provided cushion. "Thousands of times over nearly 8 decades. "Have you? Tell me what you see now." Hiroshi looked more carefully. The garden was indeed covered with countless water droplets, each catching and refracting the faint pre-dawn light in complex patterns. Water, condensation from the night's cooling air. "Look closer, choose one drop, and tell me what you actually observe." Reluctantly, Hiroshi focused on a single dewdrop balanced on a camellia petal near his position. At first glance, it appeared to be simply a small sphere of water, But as he maintained his attention, subtle details began emerging. It's more complex than I initially noticed. The drop contains reflections, the sky nearby, flowers, even my own face in miniature. Continue. The surface tension creates an almost perfect lens. I can see the petal's texture magnified through the water. The drop itself seems to be trembling slightly, responding to air currents too gentle for me to feel. And what happens as you watch? Hiroshi observed more intently. The dewdrop was indeed in constant subtle motion, not just trembling, but slowly rolling across the petal surface as the flower moved with imperceptible breezes. It's moving, very slowly, but definitely moving. What else? As dawn light gradually increased, Hiroshi noticed something remarkable happening to his chosen dewdrop. The sphere began acting like a tiny crystal ball, refracting the emerging sunlight into minute rainbows that danced across the petal's surface. It's creating colors, tiny rainbows within the water. And now, the sun's angle shifted slightly, and suddenly Hiroshi's dewdrop began evaporating, growing smaller with each passing moment until it disappeared entirely, leaving only a faint wet spot that too quickly vanished. "It's gone," he said, surprised by a small pang of loss he felt at the drop's disappearance. "How long did you observe this one dewdrop?" Hiroshi was startled to realize that nearly 40 minutes had passed without his awareness. He had become completely absorbed in the miniature world contained within a single water sphere. "I lost track of time completely." "And how did you feel during this observation?" Present, focused, interested." Hiroshi paused, recognizing something significant. "For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about the past or worrying about the future. I was simply here watching." Sister smiled. "The first morning's lesson presence awakens through attention to the present moment, no matter how small that moment might be." Over the following mornings, Sister guided Hiroshi through increasingly subtle aspects of dew meditation. He learned to observe how different surfaces created different dewdrop formations, perfect spheres on smooth leaves, elongated beads on grass blades, complex patterns on spider webs. Each morning brought new revelations. On the third day, Hiroshi discovered that dewdrops act as miniature magnifying glasses, revealing intricate details of surfaces he had never noticed despite decades of looking at the same garden features. "This leaf has the most extraordinary vein patterns." He marveled, studying a maple leaf through a dewdrop lens. "I've seen thousands of maple leaves, but never noticed this complexity." "What changed?" Sister asked. "The dewdrop forced me to look more closely. It created a frame around a tiny portion of the leaf, making it impossible to see the whole, while allowing me to discover the particular." "And what does this teach you about perception, that I've been looking at surfaces rather than seeing details? My eyes have become lazy, scanning rather than observing." On the fourth morning, Hiroshi made an even more profound discovery. As he watched dewdrops forming throughout the night's cooling, he began to understand that each drop represented a unique event, a specific intersection of temperature, humidity, surface tension, and countless other variables that would never repeat in exactly the same way. "Every dewdrop is completely unique," he told Sister "even those on the same leaf formed under slightly different conditions." "How does this recognition affect your experience of watching them?" "It makes each drop precious. I'm not just seeing dew as a general phenomenon. I'm witnessing thousands of individual miracles, each one temporary and irreplaceable." Sister nodded approvingly. You begin to understand the practice of micro-appreciation, finding the infinite within the infinitely small. By the 5th morning, Hiroshi had developed what Sister Ume called dewdrop consciousness, the ability to find complete fascination within the smallest phenomena. He no longer needed her guidance to become absorbed in observation. His attention naturally gravitated toward subtle details that revealed unexpected beauty and complexity. I understand now why children can spend hours watching insects or playing with puddles. He reflected. They haven't yet learned to dismiss small things as unimportant. What have you learned to dismiss in your own life? This question prompted deep self-examination. Hiroshi realized that his sense of life's meaninglessness had grown as he increasingly overlooked small pleasures in favor of seeking larger, more dramatic experiences. I stopped noticing the taste of tea because I'd had thousands of cups. I stopped seeing beauty in common flowers because I'd seen so many gardens. I dismissed simple conversations because I'd had countless similar exchanges. And what happens when you apply dewdrop consciousness to these ordinary experiences? On the 6th morning, Hiroshi experimented with bringing micro-awareness to his morning tea ceremony. Instead of drinking absent-mindedly while planning his day, he focused intensely on each sip, the temperature, the subtle flavor variations, the way the tea warmed his throat, the Saint-Diem patterns rising from the cup. To his amazement, the familiar tea became a complex symphony of sensations he hadn't noticed in years. It's as if I've been drinking tea through a fog, he marveled. When I truly pay attention, even this simple cup becomes extraordinary. Sister Ume smiled. The tea has not changed. Your attention has changed. The 7th morning brought Hiroshi's most profound realization. As he sat in the garden observing the day's final dew meditation, he noticed an elderly spider carefully collecting dewdrops in its web, using the water to clean itself and prepare for the day's hunting. The spider knows something about dew that I'm just learning, he observed. What is that? It treats each morning's dew as essential nourishment, not taking it for granted, despite the fact that dew appears every morning. The spider approaches today's dew with the same care it showed yesterday's dew. And what does this teach you about approaching your remaining mornings? Hiroshi felt tears rising as the deeper meaning became clear. I have been living as if I've already experienced everything worth experiencing. But each morning's dew is unique, just as each of my remaining mornings is unique. My task is not to seek entirely new experiences, but to discover the uniqueness hidden within familiar experiences. Sister nodded. You have learned the deepest teaching of morning dew. Life's richness lies not in accumulating novel experiences, but in developing the capacity to find freshness within repetition, miracle within the mundane. When Hiroshi returned home, he carried with him a small ritual inspired by his temple practice. Each morning, regardless of weather, he would spend time observing some small natural phenomenon with complete attention. Dewdrops when present, but also frost patterns in winter, new leaves in spring, insects in summer. His family immediately noticed the transformation. The man, who had become increasingly withdrawn and disinterested, began displaying curiosity about everything around him. He would spend 20 minutes studying the grain patterns in a piece of wood, or become fascinated by the way light fell across a wall at different times of day. Grandfather seems like a different person, his granddaughter observed. He notices everything now. What changed? His daughter asked him. I learned to see with dewdrop eyes, Hiroshi replied. Each moment, no matter how ordinary, contains infinite complexity when observed with genuine attention. His calligraphy practice transformed completely. Instead of mechanically reproducing familiar characters, he began studying each brushstroke with microscopic awareness. The way ink flowed across paper fibers, the subtle variations in line thickness, the unique personality that emerged in each character despite years of similar practice. My art has become alive again, he told his students. Not because I'm creating anything dramatically different, but because I'm finally paying attention to what I'm actually creating. Hiroshi established a small morning garden outside his studio where he would practice dewdrop meditation when the temple was too distant to visit. Students and visitors began joining him for these early morning sessions, learning the art of micro-awareness. The secret of remaining vibrant in later life, he would teach them, is not seeking bigger and bigger experiences, but developing finer and finer attention. A dewdrop can contain more wonder than a waterfall if you know how to look. His remaining years, though numbered, became richer than many of his earlier decades. The illness progressed slowly, but instead of diminishing his engagement with life, it heightened his appreciation for each day's simple gifts. During his final spring, when walking had become difficult, Hiroshi would sit by his window each dawn to observe dewdrops forming on the glass itself. Even these indoor dewdrops, created by temperature differences rather than natural cooling, fascinated him with their subtle patterns and brief existence. Every dewdrop teaches the same lesson. He wrote in his final journal entry, "Beauty is always present, but only visible to those who remember how to see. Wonder never disappears. Only our capacity for wonder can be lost and found again." At the water temple, Sister continued teaching morning dew meditation to countless souls who had lost their capacity for simple joy. Each student learned the same fundamental truth. Healing often comes not through dramatic transformation, but through rediscovering the miracle hidden within ordinary moments. The morning dew continued its ancient practice, forming, reflecting, evaporating, teaching anyone willing to wake early and observe closely that life's deepest satisfactions are often found not in rare peak experiences, but in the infinite richness available within the simplest phenomena for those who develop eyes to see and hearts to appreciate. In the temple's morning prayers, monks would chant, "May all beings develop dewdrop consciousness, the ability to find infinite wonder within finite moments, eternal beauty within temporary forms, and complete satisfaction within simple presence." The dew itself offered silent testimony to this possibility, appearing fresh each morning regardless of how many mornings had come before, proving that familiarity need never diminish wonder for those who approach each moment with beginner's eyes and grateful hearts. As these sacred waters have flowed through countless seasons, may the wisdom of the water temple continue to flow through your life, bringing peace to your spirit and healing to your heart. Like the eternal stream that finds its way to the ocean, may you always find your path back to inner tranquility. Go forth with the blessing of still waters and the strength of flowing currents, until we meet again beside the sacred pools of understanding.